Some people say that personal change is about willpower, determination, or discipline. But what if that's completely wrong? The truth is, there are hidden forces inside you and around you that make changing yourself feel almost impossible. In this episode, we're uncovering why it's so hard to change and what you can do to finally break through. So the question we're asking today is, can you change? Or are you just simply stuck in your ways? My name's Todd. I'm joined by my co-host, James. Hi, James.
Good morning, Todd. Really excited about today. To learn a few things. This hits home.
Yeah, we started planning this episode and I'm looking into journaling and I'm like, just started uncovering. So there's so much more to it. And we're gonna cover journaling here, but there's really so much more to actually effectuating change in our lives. So let's start with the story of David Foster Wallace. David was a brilliant American writer, best known for his novel Infinite Jest. Despite his education, literary genius, and outward success, Wallace struggled deeply with depression and a relentless drive for self-improvement that often left him feeling like a failure. From a young age, Wallace was recognized as exceptionally intelligent. He excelled academically, and he quickly rose to prominence in the literary world. However, beneath his achievements, he battled severe depression and anxiety. He was acutely aware of his own flaws and was obsessed with becoming a better, more authentic person. Wallace tried various methods to improve himself and escape his mental anguish. He sought therapy, he took medication, and even spent time in recovery programs. He read self-help books, he practiced mindfulness, and tried to adopt healthier habits. And each time, he hoped for a breakthrough, a way to finally feel good enough or at peace. But the relief was always temporary. Wallace would inevitably fall back into old patterns of self-criticism and despair. Despite his efforts, Wallace's depression worsened over the years. The more he tried to fix himself, the more he became aware of his inability to do so. And this sense of failure and hopelessness just grew overwhelming for him. And then, in 2008, after a long battle with mental illness, David Foster Wallace took his own life at age 46. His death was a profound loss to the world of literature, but also to his family and his community. This story is just so tragic, not just because of Wallace's death, but because he lived such a tortured existence with all of his gifts and also amidst this promise of a bright future. So David, he really seemed to be stuck in this pit of despair and unable to get out of it, James.
Yeah, that really resonates deeply with me. This is, of course, not something unique.
Right.
I've had this conversation with friends and family and observed it in others as well. So many folks, including me, can benefit from a better understanding of what's going on and acquiring some tools to help themselves. I hope the conversation today may prove helpful to others.
Yeah, doing the research was super helpful for me. It just opened my eyes. Man, I'm really pumped about this discussion.
So what is the starting point for personal change?
Our starting point, we have to acknowledge that we're just unhappy with ourselves. And as I was researching for this episode, I encountered this book called Happiness Hypothesis. It was written by a fellow named Jonathan Haidt, and he lays out 3 theories on happiness. Theory number 1 says, happiness comes from getting what you want. And this is it's a really simplified view of the world. And scientific research tells us that this happiness is short-lived and just leaves you feeling empty. And this is why people that just pursue getting rich or career success or fame, they just lose out in life. So this theory doesn't really hold water.
Yeah, it's exactly how I feel after ordering pizza.
Care to expand on that? How do you feel after ordering pizza?
It's good. You feel full for a while, and then you're hungry.
Yes, I love eating pizza. But afterwards, I'm like, oh, that just is not sitting well. Yeah, so that's theory number 1, doesn't hold water. Happiness coming from just getting what you want. Now, theory number 2, he shared in his book, he says, happiness comes from within and cannot be obtained by making the world conform to your desires. Now, this is a concept widely accepted by ancient philosophy. The idea behind it is if you change your mind, that's usually more effective than trying to change the world around you. And just a couple of examples here. Asceticism. These are religious folks that abstain from worldly pleasures in an effort to pursue spiritual growth. And then you have, on the other side of that, escapists. This would be someone who wants to build an off-grid cabin in the woods to escape the rat race. Now, I have friends who have off-grid cabins and stuff like that, so not criticizing any of you, but there are some that take it to the point of, I don't ever want to see people again. So, and they have the idea that they can just withdraw completely from human connection and not go insane. So that doesn't work. But a contrary view to this theory is scientific research. It just simply shows that there are some things outside of us that are worth striving for.
Yeah. I can see why this theory would get traction, right? Because you're really focusing on what you can control.
Right.
If I can control this, then I can then affect the outcome.
Yeah. Control what you can control. It's a good idea. Theory number 3. Now, this is the author's viewpoint, the one he's adopted. He said there are external conditions of life that can make you happier over the long term. And one of these conditions is relatedness. So these are the bonds that we form with other people, and we need to form these with others. From this perspective, happiness comes from within, but there's also an aspect of it that comes from outside of you. And we just need to get the balance between internal and external to find happiness. So the takeaway here is we humans spend a lot of time trying to find happiness. Many books are written on these topics, but the reality is we're very unhappy with ourselves. Even if we're rich, affluent, living in luxury, there's a lot of unhappiness in the world, and we just have to acknowledge that.
I know I certainly find myself looking for happiness in places, but there are times that I find myself searching instead of just being.
Yeah, same. Dissatisfied, discontent, unhappy, hating myself. Yeah, we're going to deal with that as we go today. So, yeah.
Yeah, we're often unhappy. So why is that?
We're unhappy because we all have internal struggles. Now, we do a good job at pretending that everything's okay, but internal struggles, they're just universal and they're very real. There is this ancient concept of the divided self, and this refers to that internal conflict that we all face. And here's some ancient wisdom on this topic. It starts with the Apostle Paul. So he was one of the Christian apostles. He met Jesus personally. In chapter 7 of his letter to the Romans, he said this. He's like, look, I don't understand my own actions. I'm not doing what I want, but I do the very thing that I hate. I have the desire to do what's right, but not the ability to carry it out. When I want to do right, evil lies close at hand. Man, that hits home to me. And then there's the Roman poet. His name is Ovid. He lived before Paul, and he said this. He said, quote, I'm dragged along by a strange new force. Desire and reason are pulling in different directions. I see the right way, and I approve it, but I follow the wrong. And then a third voice here is a fellow named Siddhartha Gautama. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. But he is the founder of Buddhism, aka the Buddha. And he said this, quote, sometimes the mind strays wherever selfish desire, lust, or pleasure lead us.
Oh, yes. Oh, that resonates.
It hits home with me just hearing those ancient truths that apply throughout history. It applies right here to me today. But to help better understand that, there are some metaphors to illustrate this inner struggle. Starting with Plato. He was a Greek philosopher from the 4th century BC. He viewed our soul as a chariot, and the calm, rational part of the mind holds the reins, but they are two different horses. So that's his way of illustrating it. And he said, the first horse is the good horse. It's upright, it has good joints, it's got a high neck, it's regal in appearance, it loves honor with modesty and self-control. You don't have to whip that horse. It's guided by verbal commands alone. And then you have the bad horse. It's crooked, it's mangy, stiff-necked, proud, indecent, deaf, and it barely yields to the whip. So just to summarize his view, some emotions and passions, they're good, like this love of honor, and they guide us in the right direction. But some passions are bad, like our uncontrolled appetite and lusts. And Plato's goal in his philosophy was to help the chariot driver gain control over the two horses.
That's an interesting take. I feel like, though, when applying that to myself, I think I replaced the horses with ferrets.
Oh, man, my roommate had a ferret one time. They are uncontrolled.
Yeah. Like, but two ferrets.
Yeah.
Are there other metaphors?
Yeah, so Jonathan Haidt, the author of the book I mentioned, he came up with an idea of himself as a rider or a jockey on the back of an elephant. And that jockey is holding the reins, but he has limited ability to coax the elephant. He has some ability to have the elephant turn right or left and stop or go, things like that. But here's the catch. The jockey's control is limited and precarious. It only works when the elephant has no desire of its own. If the elephant wants to go a different way, it's going to win. Just to further explain that metaphor, the mind is divided into two parts, and they often conflict with each other. So the jockey represents our conscious analytical mind. And this is thinking that actually requires effort on our part. We have to put our mind to something. And it is the center stage of who we are and our consciousness. The elephant, that symbolizes the powerful, intuitive, and emotional mind. These are our gut feelings, our instincts, our visceral reactions, our emotions, our intuition. Now, these are the mental processes that happen within us automatically without thinking. And here's how they work together. An example would be, let's say I'm taking a flight to London. My rider or my jockey, he's going to have to stop and think and use conscious thought to say, hey, I need to leave by 4:30 p.m. to catch my flight. That is controlled processing or conscious thought, and it's limited to one thing at a time. Now, the elephant, as part of this trip, when we're driving to the airport, everything we do is just going to be automatic. Breathing, blinking, keeping distance from the car in front of you. The elephant just takes care of those things without us having to consciously think about them. So just to summarize this metaphor of the jockey and the elephant, the jockey, those are focused thoughts, but they're limited to one thing at a time. The elephant has instinctive processing that runs in parallel, and it can do multiple things at once. So this is reason and emotion. The jockey is reason, the elephant is emotion. Reason and emotion, they must both work together to create intelligent behavior. But emotion is the elephant does most of the work. That's what we need to understand. This transcends all history, all nations, all cultures. It's a universal truth that humans face inner turmoil and suffering, especially when living comfortable, affluent lives.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what are the implications of this divided self?
The implications, as I thought of this, I realized we're all riding around on untrained elephants. Oh my goodness. I just had to start thinking about my elephant. My elephant grew up in a trailer park. It was traumatized by life in the Marines as an infantryman. It's muddy. It's stinky. It's in a foul mood most of the time. It's undisciplined a lot of the time. My elephant loves comfort foods. My elephant hates getting up early. My elephant loves to death scroll on social media because those dopamine hits just feel so good. My elephant reluctantly goes to the gym, and it congratulates itself after going to the gym because it's a very proud elephant, and it begrudgingly eats good food. So my elephant is untrained and untamed, I would say. What about your elephant, James? Do you care to share anything about yours?
I have my own elephants. The primary thing that comes to mind is just undisciplined.
Yeah.
Just undisciplined. Many facets of my life are emotionally controlled. Eating, exercise, chores, it's all emotionally driven.
I'm with you. The takeaway here is theologians, philosophers, scientists, they all agree that our minds operate in two distinct ways. And the best way for me to understand is this metaphor of this jockey and the elephant. That's how it makes sense to me.
Yeah, I can see you as an elephant jockey.
Yeah, I'm kind of thick. Oh my goodness. Yes. Elephant jockey.
So let's talk about how to train that elephant. What do we got to do?
Training the elephant. You have to start by understanding that we are multi-layered, complex creatures. To train this elephant requires an in-depth approach for the jockey to train the elephant. And there are 4 approaches here I'll go into. And these are actually referenced in this book by Jonathan Haidt. Approach number 1, we need to seek alignment with the elephant, not domination. You have to understand that the jockey cannot control the elephant by force. And that's why New Year's resolutions, willpower, or shock treatments, they just don't work when it comes to training the elephant. And here's an example. If I haven't exercised in years and I go and try CrossFit, elephant no likey. My elephant's going to revolt. I don't know about yours. So Instead of doing that, trying to control by force, the jockey has to develop skills to guide, train, and motivate the elephant. What happens there is you're creating conditions where both the rational and emotional parts of you move together. And so meaningful change comes then when the rational goals and the emotional drives are synchronized. And then happiness and well-being flow out of this. Just thinking about social media influencers out there. Social media influencers can make you just feel so bad about yourself, right? They talk about, especially the fitness ones, it's like they talk about discipline and having your mind force your body into submission. And that works for people who are already well into their journey. It doesn't work for somebody just starting out. If I'm out of shape and I just try to have my mind force my body to do things, that doesn't work. You have to start small. And I was reminded of this Japanese word called kaizen. It's the philosophy in Japan of small continuous improvements over time. That's how you need to approach. And that's how you can align your rational and emotional parts. You do small incremental change over time, and then both parts of you start aligning and working together. So seek alignment, not domination. Approach number 2, this is an approach where you try to shape the environment and the stimuli that the elephant receives. So the jockey can influence the elephant by changing the environment and the stimuli, bottom line. So you want to shape what the elephant sees. And it encourages the elephant to develop better desires and habits. And here's a famous quote that I'm sure everyone's heard this, but it says this: you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. What that means is if you're hanging out in bad environments, your elephant is going to start adopting those mindsets and those bad behaviors and those bad philosophies. The idea here with this approach is you and your elephant need to hang out in good environments. And that is going to shape what you desire, what you like, and it's going to really influence the elephant. Approach number 3, this is training and conditioning. This is where I started on researching this episode, training and conditioning, and I was going to focus on just journaling, but there's multiple aspects to this with training and conditioning. You can use techniques like meditation, seeking out the help of a therapist, or maybe even medication. And I say that cautiously because I used to look back, I think of my younger days, and I thought about people having to take medication to help with their mental health. And I kind of had a negative view of that, but not so anymore. If you're really in the throes of a mental health crisis, medication can really help. And it can help you treat the immediate symptoms while you seek therapy. So don't shy away from medication. And that's part of training and conditioning for the elephant. Meditation, therapy, and medication if necessary. And so this approach, the training and conditioning, it allows us to gradually retrain the elephant's auto responses and emotional habits. And over time, these practices can help the elephant develop constructive instincts and reactions. So you can implement practices like breathing exercises in the morning coupled with meditation. If those are a struggle for you, you may need help from a coach. Training and conditioning, that's approach number 3. And then we have approach number 4, motivation and rewards. So this jockey can motivate the elephant using these rewards, giving rewards for small achievements, and it makes the elephant feel good. And so what you're doing with rewards is you're reinforcing positive behavior. Now, I'm not talking about, hey, I had this success, so I'm going to go eat this fatty meal. I'm going to eat a whole pizza. If you do that, you're actually feeding the elephant the wrong way. So comfort food, not referring to that. What I'm talking about, motivation and rewards, is you need to recognize and celebrate the bright spots. The bright spots are moments when the rider and elephant are aligned. When you recognize and celebrate that, it reinforces the desired behaviors and it just encourages the elephant's cooperation. In practice, this is where you would develop the habit of keeping a journal. And we talked about this in the last episode. You want to write down these small victories and you want to stop and give thanks. And so a lot of these journaling methods out there, you can buy journals that walk you through this process, but you start and end your day with writing down things that you're grateful for. Maybe in the morning, hey, I woke up. I'm feeling pretty good. I got decent sleep. And you focus on those things. And then at the end of the day, you just look back on your day and go, you know what? I had this interaction with this coworker. Normally I would behave this way and I would respond this way, but I didn't. And then you stop and give thanks for that. And if you're a Christian, you're going to be thanking God for that. If you're some other religion, you will thank your God for that. If you have no religion, you will thank yourself maybe, or thank the universe, whatever the case. But as a Christian, I sit down and thank God and say, you know what? That was a victory. I had this thing that happened today, and normally I would react negatively, but I was able to keep that under wraps and not have a negative initial response. So those are some negative aspects. But then there are, just stop and think about the good things on the day, because my elephant wants to focus on the negativity and say, oh, this day just stank. Oh my goodness. This day was horrible. And the only good part of it was I ended the day and the sun went, that's the way my elephant reacts about negative experiences through the day. So we have to really give focused mental energy toward, you know what? Here are the good aspects of my day. And I think it was a marriage counselor that said they got into the habit of just sitting down and saying, hey, this is a good thing that happened to me today. That is one of the motivation and rewards that you can practice to really train the elephant to stop thinking about the negative. The takeaway here from these 4 approaches, change, it's just not easy, and it's not a given.
Yeah. Change is work, but it can be hugely rewarding. Yeah.
100%.
You were talking about the medication earlier. I just want to jump back to that for just a minute, because this is important. Because there's, over these long years, there's been lots of stigma around medication or therapy and all these things. It's like we're at a point now where folks need to realize that it's okay to talk to a counselor, to go see a psychiatrist.
Yeah. Or a psychic. No, I'm kidding.
Let's not go that far. Yeah.
That's not going to help.
That's not going to help.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, but if you're going through something, medication can be a short-term thing that can very much help you.
Yes.
You need to work with someone, a professional, to figure out what that is and what that looks like. But it could be short-term. It can be long-term. And if it is long-term, there's nothing wrong with that either.
Right.
There are lots of people that can benefit from some medications for lots of different things, from just life things to their own sort of physiology and what goes on.
In Christian circles, it's frowned on.
Oh, yeah.
They don't talk about it. And I've seen it. And I've had the attitude myself that, oh, well, if you find out one of your Christian friends is taking medications for their mental health, and I didn't understand it at the time, and it's embarrassing. I look back on it and think how insensitive I was to think that thought. Now, I didn't go to the person and say, you shouldn't be taking medication, but just thinking that thought and thinking less of them. I'm embarrassed about that, because you think about your physical problems. You have physical problems and you go to the doctor. It's very common to take a medication to treat the symptom, and then you want to look at, okay, what's the underlying root cause, and work on that. So yeah, you treat the symptom to relieve the pain in the immediate or the near term, and then you go get physical therapy to deal with the underlying problem. Just an example, went to my ortho. I'm like, my knees are killing me. He did some work on me. He prescribed some meds and said, hey, take this, it'll help. But just so you know, the problem is not in your knees. The problem is in your hips. So the root cause of this is you need to go to physical therapy for a month and get them to work on your hips, and I'm sure your knee pain's going to go away. That's how it worked with physical ailments. It's the same for mental. If you're dealing with a mental problem, you feel like you can't cope. You feel like you just can't make it. We talk about veterans. There are 22 veterans a day that commit suicide. They're dealing with very real problems mentally that cause physical pain, and they need help. So don't shy away from stepping up and asking for help from a mental health care provider, and they may prescribe medication for you. Don't shy away from that. Take the meds to deal with the immediate short-term issue while you're working on the root cause. So, man, thanks for bringing that up, James. That's good stuff, man.
I'll say this, even your primary care physician, there's nothing wrong. It's fine to start there and have that conversation. Part of that, it's being willing to have that honest conversation with your physician and say, this is kind of what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're triggering other things in my mind, not trying to pick on the Christian community, but these thoughts come to my mind. A lot of times, if you go to a Christian counselor, usually it's a pastor. This is someone that's gone to Bible college and they've been serving this role of a pastor within a church. But oftentimes they're not trained in how to actually counsel people. So they don't have the training, And oftentimes they're very young. I say very young, I'm talking 20s, 30s. That's very young to me. But oftentimes they don't know how to guide a person. They don't know how to counsel. And that's not a criticism of them. If you don't know, you just don't know.
Yep.
But the thing is, if you're a counselor, you need to realize, hey, this is not my expertise, and you need to bring in other help. So oftentimes with pastors, the ego gets involved, and they're very formulaic, and they say, okay, if you just memorize the scripture, and if you do this and you do that, then you're going to get this result, and you're going to feel better. It often doesn't work. And I've heard pastors actually complain about, well, I told them to do this, and they just weren't doing it right. So that's why they went to somebody else instead of me. And it's like, just scale back the ego if you're a religious leader and realize your personality just might not be a good fit for the person you're talking to. You may be putting them off. And you need to have enough love for that person to say, you know what? Maybe you need someone else to help. And you can refer them to a professional that's been trained in the area that this person is struggling with. If you're a Christian, don't shy away from getting professional help. And if you go to a pastor and they're not helping, feel free to go look for help elsewhere. You should be doing that. You're your own person. You can do that. You're not rebelling against authority or anything like that. You're trying to improve. And so you need to get the help wherever you can. That's just my feedback on it. Your thoughts, James?
Yep. I'm in agreement. Maybe we dig into this more in a future episode. I don't know if we want to go that far or not, but the difference between biblical counseling versus Christian counseling is a whole thing.
Yeah. Even with Christian and secular circles, a lot of counselors are formulaic. You go to a counselor, they don't really know what they're doing. And so they will just send you a Word document and say, hey, just read this. And that's their solution. This secular people, and it's also Christian counselors as well. They're formulaic and they say, if you do this and you do that, then this is going to be the result. That's not who we are as people. We're very complex. And thinking about the jockey and the elephant analogy, man, that just freed my mind up. Hearing that metaphor, I'm like, that's exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
And it's helpful to understand we're very complex. And if you're a Christian, the Bible talks about that. The heart, it's just a deep well. And you can't fathom the depths of a person's intellect and psyche and heart and who they are. Nobody can do that. And so for a counselor to stop and go, okay, well, you need to do this, this, and this. What they're doing is they're thinking that they know the problem and they think they understand everything that's going on. A good counselor is going to realize that they have no idea what's going on. And they're just going to sit with the person and talk.
Yep.
A good counselor is not an enabler, though. They're not going to sit with that person and go, you know what? Yes, let's just talk about your feelings and let's just keep marinating in this negative emotion. They're not going to do that. They're going to go, look, you've got these negative emotions, acknowledge that, and then you're going to move over and say, well, just dig into this. What's causing this? A good counselor is going to dig into that and really help you with solutions.
Yep.
And it's not an overnight fix. It's not easy. So
no, it's not easy. It's work.
Yeah. So training the elephant, 4 approaches there. So what do you think, man? Did we get a listener question?
We did. We kind of begged at the end of the last episode for, I won't go that far. We asked if listeners had any feedback to please share. So we received a question from a fellow named Gordon on the topic of coherence therapy from episode 14. And here's his question. Isn't this just the normal process of reflecting on your past and learning from it so you can grow in a positive way? Just do it. Don't pay a therapist.
So Gordon, thanks for the question. And I agree, yes, we all need to spend time reflecting on the past so we can learn and grow. But sometimes we need additional help from another human being, someone who knows how to help us process things. And coherence therapy was what we talked about in episode 14. It is a therapeutic system that helps people with negative thought patterns. These negative thought patterns that give them a skewed perception of reality. And these negative patterns, they create problems in their relationship. And here's the catch. They're usually unaware of the underlying problem. And so that's where a trained professional can help you clear away this mental debris and get to a better state of mind. The key is you don't know what's going on underneath, and a professional can really help dig into that. Now, I'm not talking about, like I just mentioned, marinating in your emotions. Some counselors want you to be dependent on them. Get away from those counselors. In this question, Gordon was talking about, hey, don't pay for it. Honestly, a good counselor is not there just to get your money and have you keep coming back for weekly sessions. A good counselor wants you to get better. So they're going to meet with you and say, okay, you're experiencing this. Let's dig into that. They're going to give you practical steps to say, here's how you deal with that and reprogram your mind. And so I would recommend you look up, it's called memory reconsolidation as an overall term, but coherence therapy, I believe, is part of that. Now, I'm no expert. I've just learned a little bit about this stuff. I'm not a trained professional, but I've talked to some. And so that's why I highly recommend that if you're struggling and dealing with problems, talk with a professional. They're going to help you. So, Gordon, thanks for the question. I appreciate that. And I agree with you, but sometimes we just need a little extra help.
Yep. As humans, we sometimes really struggle to ask for help.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm so thankful for the time I spent in the military, because that really helped me understand the value of talking to fellow human beings. I never talked to a mental health professional when I was in the military, but sitting and talking with my friends when we were on deployment, that was therapeutic. And I heard Jordan Peterson talk about this on a podcast one time, but he said scientifically, we have no idea why this works, but the act of sitting down and talking about your problems helps you sort things in your mind. The other person doesn't necessarily have to offer any suggestions for how to help. But when you actually verbalize what's going on in your head, you're processing things and you're sorting through things and you come to realizations. At a minimum, if you're talking to your friend and just going through recapping problems and stuff like that, it's going to help you process things. And then sometimes you may get to the point where you go, you know what? I need help with this. And don't shy away from that. Don't shy away from meds. If you need them, they're going to deal with the immediate issue. And then talking with a professional, you may have to go to several different professionals because some are formulaic. Some want you to be dependent on them. Others just don't know what they're doing. And that's okay. They're human beings too. There's no magic pill, but talk to someone. And if you have to, go see multiple people until you find the person that really knows how to help with what you're going through. This is a good place to wrap up. But just to summarize, we've got in our minds inner struggles. And this best analogy I've encountered here was from Jonathan Haidt in his book, Happiness Hypothesis. He talks about the jockey and the elephant. We have this inner struggle. You can't deny that. And we talked about these 4 approaches. And we need to seek alignment, not domination of the elephant. We need to shape the environment and the stimuli that we're existing in. We need to train and condition ourselves. We need to actively pursue motivation and rewards. So any of these things by themselves is not helpful. So motivation by itself, that's empty. Motivation lasts a very short time period, but small changes over time, training and conditioning, shaping the environment, and also just seeking alignment, that's going to help. My word of the day is Kaizen, small incremental change over time. And I think, and for me, understanding this struggle within and this metaphor of the jockey and the rider, it really released me from a lot of guilt and shame because I beat myself up. I beat myself up for my failures, and that's not a good thing. What I would say you could take away from this discussion is have compassion for yourself and also have compassion for others, because we're all riding on these elephants that like to do their own thing, right? So if you have any comments or questions, please reach out. Use the contact methods here in the show description and give us a shout. We'd love to hear from you.
Indeed, we would. Well, Todd, enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Good chat.
And thank you for listening.
We'll see you on the path.